The courtroom smelled like old books and coffee. I sat under the bright lights with my hands folded so people would not see they shook. My daughter and her husband sat across from me like two judges. They looked calm and sure. I felt like I was the thing they had decided to throw away. A lawyer spoke for them. He said I was confused. He said I forgot names and paid wrong bills. He said I could not decide things for myself. People in the room whispered. I heard the word protect like a blade. My daughter's face was pale. Her eyes moved like she was reading lines from a play she had practiced. The petition lay open on the table. Paper that asked the court to take my life and money and put them under other hands. I tried to breathe normal. It felt like swimming underwater. I had no plan for words that could cut deep in their actions. I had some small things, though, a few tiny cameras and a little drive in my pocket. I thought of the missing mail, the odd phone calls, the bank clerk who had looked at me funny. I felt a steady quiet inside, a careful plan I had not dared speak. The judge looked at me with pity. "Do you have anything to say?" she asked. My mouth was dry. I reached into my pocket and put a small USB drive on the table. My voice came out low but certain. "Play the video," I said. "If you think he deserved it, hit subscribe for more true revenge stories." The lights dimmed and the screen went black. The judge nodded. That black screen took me back. It took me to the first small theft and the night I chose to watch, to learn, to wait. The rest began then. Months earlier, the house changed like weather. It was small things at first. I noticed whispers in halls. A laugh cut off when I opened the door. My daughter and her husband talked soft and then stopped. They moved like actors hiding a script. One morning I went to get my mail, and a card from my sister was missing. I had wanted to read it with coffee. I asked my daughter. "The post office is slow," she said, smiling like it was nothing. My hands went cold. She looked away like a child who had been found with sweets in her hand. Keys vanished. A receipt gone. A photo missing from the mantel. I blamed my memory at first. People said, "You must be tired." I tried to laugh. Inside I felt small and shaky. I searched the house like a man looking for pieces he thought belonged to him. They laughed at dinner and called me forgetful. "You worry too much, Dad," her husband said, clinking his glass. I felt a weight drop into my chest. The house grew heavy with small lies. Each day I felt more alone, like a man watching his own life slip through nets he could not see. I bought tiny cameras that looked like clocks and plants. I told myself I wanted to feel safe again. I set them where I could see the kitchen and the hall without being noticed. At night, I watched and learned their steps. The cameras became my quiet guards. I kept my face calm at the table and stored every file away like a buried stone. The first time I played back footage, I felt a shock that nearly dropped my coffee. The screen showed the hallway plain and still. My daughter walked by with a small smile, reached for the stack of mail, and folded a bright envelope into her hand. She slipped it into her bag without hurry like a fox with a rabbit. My fingers trembled. I watched it twice and then 3 times. She had smoothed the paper and read a name that made my throat hurt, my sister's handwriting. I shut the tablet with a soft sound like a small door closing. I did not march to the kitchen. I did not raise my voice. I sat down again and wrote the time and date in a small book. I kept watching. Little thefts surfaced. Receipts, notes, small bills. The footage showed soft practice hands. I saved each clip and wrote a short note below. The camera became my memory. I learned not to jump. Instead, I made a slow plan. If I had lost my mind, I would be the one to show the truth. At night, I sorted files like a man stacking wood for winter. Each clip got a name and a time. I labeled them clearly. Mail _theft _11_03. Receipt take _11_17. The small files became proof even when my chest felt hollow. I told myself to be patient and careful. The cameras were my witnesses. I would not let the house lie about me. I would not be made into the villain in my own home. Not long after, my email started vanishing. Mornings the inbox had messages, and by noon it looked like a desert. I never shared passwords with anyone. My daughter said, Maybe you forgot your password, Dad. I can help. She said it like a kind friend. The voice felt like salt in a wound. The heater hummed, but the house felt cold. Friend stopped calling. Mr. Peters from across the street avoided my mailbox. I heard a neighbor say, "I heard he's not well." That cut deeper than a slap. The world that knew me seemed to move away like shadows at dusk. I made a nightly habit of watching the footage again and again. I labeled every moment a camera caught. Door underscore open underscore 18 underscore 02. Hand underscore and underscore drawer underscore 20 underscore 43. I saved backups on a small encrypted drive and hid copies in places only I knew. I kept my face calm at dinner and let them think I was slow and harmless. Inside, I sharpened my mind like a knife. I learned their patterns. I learned when they left, when they returned, who touched what and who lied. Each small discovery accompanied a slow breath. I practiced being quiet and watching. It felt like being a soldier, waiting for the right time to move. One night the camera caught him, the husband, at my desk under a dull lamp. I watched him on the screen like I watched a storm rise. He opened my checkbook and traced a name with his finger like it was a recipe. He placed paper on the table and copied my signature line by line, like a man copying a prize. He signed checks and tucked them into his pocket with a small smile. My mouth went dry. I felt something tighten in my chest. The video showed him filling more than one check. He compared the lines and nodded as if pleased. The feeling in me changed. This was no small theft. This was a plan. I took the video to the bank with the quiet of a man who knows how to stay steady when the ground shakes. A young clerk with kind eyes looked at the footage. He said, "We will freeze it and investigate." He gave me a card and promised to call. I believed him. If you think he deserved it, hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. Back home, I did not shout. I made my meals alone and kept smiling at them like a man who hides a map on his person. I copied the file, labeled it forged underscore checks underscore 01, and backed it into 3 places. I felt small and strong at once. I had set a trap by watching. The camera had seen his hand. The camera could show the world. I felt the taste of a future I could not yet name, and it was steady and hot like iron. The next morning, I acted normal. I poured coffee, read the paper, and listened to them talk in the kitchen. Their voices carried small laughter, but it didn't sound free. My daughter asked, "Did the bank say anything, Dad?" I smiled and shook my head. Nothing yet. She looked at her husband. They shared a quick look, quiet and sharp. Later that day, I checked my email and saw a notice from the bank. Attempted access denied. Someone had tried to log in using my old password. I changed it again and saved the printout in a locked drawer. I made a copy of the email for my record. Everything now had to be written down, numbered, stored. That night, they whispered again. I stood in the hallway, light thin under their door. "He's getting suspicious," my daughter said. "He's losing it," the husband answered. "We just have to act faster." I leaned against the wall and breathed slow. Every word they spoke became another stone in my wall of proof. The next morning, I watched the camera feeds again. I wrote notes about each clip. My notebook was full of times, dates, and what they took. I wasn't crazy. I was keeping score. I stopped thinking of the cameras as safety toys. They were my soldiers. They saw everything. Each night, I looked into their little lights and whispered, "Keep watch." When I went to bed, I didn't feel weak anymore. I felt ready. Something dark but calm grew inside me, a steady plan that waited for the right time to breathe. 3 days later, I found my front door key missing from the hook. I searched every drawer. My daughter laughed when I asked, "Maybe you misplaced it, Dad." She handed me another key from a drawer. "Here, this one works." It looked the same, but the teeth were filed down. I checked the lock later. This key didn't fit right. That night, the footage showed her husband standing by the door, holding the real key, making copies. My chest felt hot. They were building a way to control every door in my life. I didn't say anything. I bought new locks the next day and changed them quietly while they were out. I kept the old keys and dropped them into a jar marked evidence. I even filmed myself replacing the locks for proof. Later, I found my bank letters missing again. When I asked, they smiled too quickly. You probably misplaced them. It was their favorite line. I smiled back, steady as ever. Inside, I promised myself I'd make their smiles vanish one day. I added another camera in the office shelf facing my desk. It looked like a picture frame. I checked every angle twice. I began to like the rhythm of it, watching, saving, writing, waiting. It made me feel alive again. Every night, the footage grew longer. Every lie they told became another chapter in the story I was building. I knew someday the truth would need a stage. When that day came, the cameras would speak for me. Weeks passed. I learned their timing better than my own heartbeat. The husband left every morning at 9, came home at 6. My daughter spent her afternoons on calls, whispering to someone I couldn't see. One afternoon I heard her say, "He won't notice if we move the money slowly." Then a pause. Yes, he's almost ready for evaluation. Evaluation. The word hit like ice water. I walked to my room and wrote it down with the date and time. I checked the footage later. It caught her lips forming that same word. That night, I dreamed of standing in a courtroom with no voice. I woke up sweaty, heart racing. The air smelled like fear and dust. I turned on the screen and watched again until dawn. The truth in those files was now my heartbeat. I stopped sharing meals with them. I pretended stomach pain, headaches, anything to stay out of their line of sight. My daughter knocked on my door one morning. "Dad, are you okay?" Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were busy, scanning my room. I smiled. "I'm fine." I knew better now. The footage that night showed her checking my drawers while I was in the shower. My papers, my mail, all touched. I labeled that clip daughter _search_04_22. I backed it up twice. I no longer doubted myself. The house was a stage, and I was the man behind the curtain. Every actor would meet their truth when the lights came on. The first letter from the court came quietly, folded and official. Notice a petition for guardianship. I read the words twice. They planned to prove I was unfit. My daughter's name stood as petitioner, her husband's name as witness. For a minute, my hands shook so hard I had to sit. My own child wanted to own my life. I looked around the house, at the furniture I bought, the pictures of her as a child. It all looked strange now, like props in someone else's play. I didn't cry. I placed a letter under a lamp and took photos, front and back. I labeled them petition _1 and saved them. Then I went outside and watched the sun burn low behind the trees. It reminded me that fire always finds air. That night, I added one more camera, high in the living room corner. It watched the front door and couch. I didn't tell a soul. I also called the bank clerk, who had helped before. He whispered, "They came again last week. Try to access your account." My stomach turned to iron. "Thank you," I said. I lay awake late that night. I made tea and sipped slow. I thought about my life. They saw me as weak, but I was a man who had built every brick of this house with work and sweat. No paper could erase that. I promised myself that if they wanted war, I would give them proof written in light. The days before the hearing felt like waiting inside a storm cloud. They moved around the house light-footed and polite, but the air was tense. My daughter rehearsed things under her breath. He forgets things. He loses track. I heard it through the wall. Her husband smiled at me each morning. "We're here to help you, Dad." The word help had turned into poison. I nodded, said thank you, and added another page to my notebook. I made copies of every video and kept one set in a small metal box in the garage. The rest I uploaded to a hidden cloud folder. I even recorded myself walking clearly through daily chores, writing checks, watering plants, balancing my bills. I wanted no doubt about my mind. Sometimes I caught my reflection in the mirror and almost didn't recognize the man staring back. He looked calm, not scared. He looked like someone waiting for a fire alarm to ring. On the morning before the court date, I stood in the kitchen. My daughter smiled brightly. "Tomorrow will be easy," she said. I returned her smile. "Yes, it will." She didn't know I had already packed my little USB drive. That night I sat by the window, lights off, screens glowing softly. I whispered to cameras one last time, "Tomorrow, you speak for me." Then I closed my eyes and let the dark fold around me. The morning of a hearing began gray and still. I woke before sunrise, made coffee, and looked around the kitchen. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt the same. The air was thick with what was about to happen. I put on my old blue suit, the one I had worn to my daughter's graduation years ago. My hands were steady as I knotted the tie. I packed the USB drive in a small box and slipped it into my pocket. I didn't need words today. The truth would speak for itself. When we arrived at the courthouse, they looked confident. My daughter's lawyer smiled like the ending was already written. She avoided my eyes. Her husband whispered something to her, and they both nodded. I stood behind them in line, calm as a man waiting for his name to be called. Inside the courtroom, the sound of papers rustled like dry leaves. The judge sat high above us, her face unreadable. The lawyer began right away, saying I was mentally declining and financially reckless. They showed pictures of messy rooms, photos my daughter had staged. People looked at me with pity. I sat silent, letting the air carry their lies. My daughter wiped fake tears. Her husband looked at her with practiced concern. For a moment, I almost believed their act myself. Then I reached into my pocket and felt the small metal shape of a USB drive. My mind stopped shaking. I looked at the judge, waiting for my turn. When it came, my voice was quiet but sure. "Your Honor," I said, "I have something to show." The judge raised an eyebrow. The lawyer tried to object, but the judge waved him down. "Let's see what he has." The bailiff plugged the drive into the courtroom screen. My videos began to play, one after another. The first clip showed my daughter taking mail. The next showed her husband forging my signature. Then came the footage of them whispering about me being unfit. Each clip had timestamps, dates, and sound. The room went so still that I could hear the judge's pen stop moving. My daughter's face turned white. Her husband leaned back, his mouth tight. Someone in the back gasped. I sat still, watching my own house betray them in perfect silence. The judge leaned forward. "These videos, where did they come from?" she asked. "I installed cameras for my safety," I said. "They recorded everything." The lawyer tried again. "These could be edited." The judge cut him off. "They have metadata. They're authentic." When the last video ended, I felt my body finally exhale. The judge turned toward my daughter. "Would you like to explain this?" She stammered. Her voice cracked. Her husband tried to whisper to her, but she shook him off. It was like watching a mass melt. Every lie she'd built slid away. For months, they had called me paranoid. Now every screen in the room showed who they really were. The judge looked at me again. "Thank you for your patience, Mr. Lane." I nodded once. My throat felt tight. The truth was finally louder than their story. When the lights came back on, I saw tears on my daughter's face. "Dad, please," I was scared, she said. Her husband kept silent. His confidence was gone. He looked at the floor, jaw set like he'd swallowed glass. The lawyer gathered his papers with shaking hands. "We withdraw our petition," he said quickly. The judge raised a hand. "Too late. This evidence will be reviewed." The judge's gavel hit wood. "Case dismissed. I am referring this for a criminal investigation." The words felt like thunder rolling through my chest. My knees nearly gave out, not from weakness, but from the weight leaving me. The bailiff brought me the USB back. "You may keep this, sir," he said quietly. I turned to my daughter, but she couldn't look at me. Her face was red, her lips trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I didn't answer. The words felt too small for what she'd done. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited. Cameras flashed. Someone shouted, "Sir, is it true your family tried to take your estate?" I didn't stop to answer. I just said, "Justice speaks in time." The air felt lighter outside. For months I had lived in fear inside my own house. Now I was free, though not whole. Freedom had come at a cost I hadn't counted. The cost of blood turned into strangers. I went home alone that day. I sat on my couch and let the quiet fill the room. The cameras still blinked softly in corners. They were no longer my guards. They were my witnesses. The days that followed blurred into each other. My phone didn't stop ringing. News people wanted interviews. Lawyers called. Even strangers sent letters thanking me for standing up. They said I'd given them courage. The bank restored my accounts. The kind clerk smiled when I came in. Told you justice would listen, he said. I shook his hand. You did more than listen. You helped. At home, I changed every lock and painted the walls fresh white. The smell of new paint covered the old air. I took down some of the cameras, but kept a few as art. Their round lenses glimmered like mirrors. When I looked into them, I didn't see fear anymore. I saw someone who had survived. Neighbors began to wave again. Mrs. Peters from across the street brought pie. We saw you on TV, she said. Good for you. I smiled, though a part of me still ached. My daughter hadn't called. I didn't know if she ever would. I sat on the porch one night, watching the sunset turn gold. The wind was soft. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for footsteps in the hall. The house finally felt like it belonged to me again. I whispered to the night, the truth was worth it. And in that stillness, I believed it. Weeks later, I got a letter, this time one I could trust. It was from the prosecutor's office. They had opened a case for financial fraud and forgery. My daughter's husband faced charges. She might testify to reduce her part. I folded the letter and set it aside. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. I started a small YouTube channel. They call me Paranoid. I told my story in short pieces, speaking into a camera with quiet honesty. I didn't show anger, only truth. Within days, people commented, "You saved me. This happened to my dad." The channel grew fast. Reporters wanted updates. Security companies reached out with offers. I accepted one sponsor that built small cameras, the same kind that had saved me. I donated every dollar to a group that helps protect elders from scams. For the first time, my story wasn't about pain. It was about purpose. I had turned their betrayal into something that could protect others. Some nights, I still dream of the courtroom. The flash of the screen, my daughter's face melting into shock. Then I'd wake up and breathe steady. Justice had already spoken. I just had to keep telling the story so others would believe they could, too. The comments on my channel became part of my mornings. People from everywhere wrote things like, "My son tried to take my house too," or "You gave me courage." I didn't expect that. I thought I'd post once, maybe twice, and move on, but the story kept spreading. Some nights, I sat by the window reading messages until the screen blurred. It felt strange. Thousands of strangers knew me, but the one person I wanted to hear from stayed silent. My daughter hadn't written or called. One afternoon, the young bank clerk stopped by. He handed me a small folder. "The court asked for your statement," he said. "They need the original video copies." I gave him the backups I'd made. He smiled. "You're the most prepared man I've ever met." When he left, I walked through the house again. Every corner held a memory, some good, some bitter. I touched the wall by the kitchen door, where I'd once watched her sneak the mail. My hand didn't shake this time. That evening I recorded a new video. I looked into the lens and said, sometimes the people who call you paranoid are just afraid you're paying attention. It wasn't about my family anymore. It was about everyone who'd ever been gaslit, dismissed, or silenced. When I uploaded it, I felt lighter. The house didn't feel haunted anymore. It just felt like mine. The next day brought news from the courthouse. My daughter's husband had been arrested. Forgery, attempted fraud, and elder abuse. His face appeared on local TV. They called it a shocking family betrayal caught on camera. I turned off the television after 30 seconds. I didn't need to watch. I'd already lived it. Later, my daughter called for the first time in months. Her voice was small. "Dad, I'm sorry," she said. "He told me it was for our future." I believed him. Silence stretched between us. I could almost hear her breathing. I didn't know what to say. The truth sat heavy in my chest. "You believed lies because they were easier than truth," I said. "Now you'll have to live with that." She cried softly, And for a moment I remembered her as a child, small and sweet, holding my hand at the park. The sound broke something in me, but not enough to let her back in yet. After the call, I sat in my chair and stared at the cameras still on the shelf. I thought about turning them off for good, but then I remembered they weren't symbols of fear anymore. They were symbols of proof, of survival. I whispered to myself, "You did what you had to." The night outside was quiet, like the world itself was finally listening. I began to rebuild my days slowly. I cooked meals again, visited the park, and even joined a local book club. People recognized me sometimes. "You're the man from the video," they said. I smiled politely, though fame felt strange on my skin. One morning, I found a letter on my porch with no return address. Inside was a single note written in my daughter's handwriting. "I'm in counseling. I hope one day you'll forgive me." No lies this time, just hope. I tucked the note into a book I kept by my bed. I wasn't ready to answer yet, but maybe someday. I spent that afternoon repainting the garage. When I was done, I hung one of the old cameras on the wall, not as a watcher, but as art. I placed a small label under it. "Truth never sleeps." It made me smile. At sunset, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The air smelled like dust and rain. I thought of how close I had come to losing everything, to being labeled crazy and locked out of my own life. If you believe truth always finds its way, hit subscribe for more real revenge stories. The camera on my porch light blinked red once, catching the sky fading from gold to blue. I didn't turn it off. I liked knowing the truth still had eyes. The channel kept growing faster than I imagined. A news station invited me to talk live about my case. I agreed, mostly because I want to tell people one thing. Never ignore your instincts. The host asked, "What gave you the courage to fight your own family?" I thought for a moment before answering. "Love," I said. "Love for myself, for truth, for the life I built." They tried to take that. I couldn't let them. When the segment aired, messages poured in again. People said they bought cameras, documented their own proof, stood up to their abusers. It was bigger than me now. That week, a lawmaker reached out. "Your story helped us push a new elder protection bill," she said. I couldn't believe it. My small house war had turned into a ripple across the country. At night, I looked at the small blinking light near the kitchen door and thought, you started all this. The same lens that once caught betrayal was now catching peace. I still miss my daughter, but missing her didn't hurt as much anymore. Sometimes healing means accepting that not everyone walks the whole road with you. When I went to sleep, I didn't dream of courts or lies anymore. I dreamed of light, steady, patient, and true. Months passed. Seasons shifted. My house, once filled with whispers, was now quiet in a good way. The air smelled of new beginnings. The bank clerk, now a friend, visited often. We shared coffee and small talk about ordinary things. Once he asked, "Do you ever regret what happened?" I thought about it. Regret? No, I said. Sadness, maybe, but not regret. The truth needed to come out. I began mentoring others who wrote to me online, teaching them how to document safely, how to protect themselves. It felt good to turn pain into something useful. One evening, I got a message from my daughter again. She wrote, "I'm volunteering at a shelter, trying to do better." I replied simply, "Keep doing that." That night, I sat on the porch with tea in my hands and my cat curled at my feet. The quiet hum of life felt whole again. The sky deepened into dark purple. The camera above the door blinked once, its red light steady. I smiled at it. "You can rest now," I whispered. For the first time in a long while, I felt safe, not because I was watching, but because I didn't need it anymore. The truth had already done its work. The court hearing for the fraud case arrived in early spring. I hadn't planned to attend, but something inside me said I should. I needed to see it through, to see how lies end. The courtroom looked smaller this time. My daughter sat alone in the front row. Her husband sat at the defense table, hands cuffed, face pale. The lawyer who once called me delusional now looked tired. When the judge entered, everyone stood. I sat quietly in the back, unseen. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. Bank logs, signatures, the videos. Each piece was a nail sealing the coffin of their deceit. The judge's voice was firm. "Mr. Lang, you are guilty on all counts." His head dropped. The gavel hit once. It sounded like the last door closing. My daughter turned around. Our eyes met for the first time in months. She mouthed the words, "I'm sorry." I nodded once, not in forgiveness, but in acknowledgement. Some truths didn't need words. Outside, the wind felt softer. I stood on the courthouse steps and watched clouds drift like smoke after a fire. This time, there was no pity in the stares around me, only respect. Justice had burned quietly, not with rage but with steady flame. When I came home that day, the house felt new again. I made tea, turned on the radio, and listened to a song my wife used to love. For the first time, I let myself cry, not from pain but from release. Everything I'd carried for so long, the fear, the loneliness, the betrayal, poured out like rain. I sat at the kitchen table and let it happen. When it was over, I felt clean. I walked around the house, touching things that had once hurt to look at. The hallway where she stole the mail, the desk where he forged my name. They no longer felt poisoned. The truth had washed them clear. That night, I uploaded one more video. They called me paranoid. I said softly to the lens, but paranoia is just awareness waiting for proof. I paused, smiled faintly, and ended the video there. By morning, it had millions of views. People share it with the tag, #TruthDoesn'tAge. My inbox filled again. Strangers call me brave. But bravery, I thought, was just another word for finally being tired of fear. The attention grew faster than I could track. Talk shows, podcasts, even magazines wanted interviews. I turned most of them down. I didn't need fame. I'd already found freedom. Still, I said yes to one, a quiet interview with a reporter named Nora. She came to my house, sat at my table, and listened. "Why cameras?" she asked. I answered, "Because I stopped being believed. When words fail, proof must speak." She nodded, eyes soft. "What do you want people to remember from your story?" I looked toward the old camera on the shelf. That truth isn't loud. It's patient, and it never stops watching. When the article came out, the headline read, "They called him paranoid. Now he teaches the world to see." I laughed when I saw it. It was strange how pain, once private, had become a lesson for others. Later that night, I watched the sunset through the same window where I once saw shadows of betrayal. Now, only orange light filled the glass. I thought about closing the blinds, but decided to leave them open. The world could watch me now. I had nothing left to hide. Months passed quietly. I spent mornings reading comments from people who had followed my journey. Some said they had started documenting their own safety. Others said my story gave them courage to leave bad homes. Then one day, a thick envelope arrived. It was from a lawyer representing the bank's Elder Protection Division. Inside was a donation receipt, $500,000 raised through awareness campaigns using my video. They had named it the Lane Trust. I held the letter in disbelief. My pain had become protection for others. I whispered, maybe that's what this was for. That evening, I sat outside under the soft hum of cicadas. My phone buzzed, a message from my daughter. I saw the foundation. "You did good, Dad. I'm proud." For the first time in a long time, her words didn't hurt. I typed back, "So are you if you keep choosing right." She sent a small heart emoji. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, but it was something that looked like light. I looked at the sky. The same stars that had watched me through darkness now watched me heal. A year had passed since the first betrayal. Thanksgiving again. The house glowed with quiet warmth. I had invited a few close friends, the bank clerk, Nora the reporter, and 2 neighbors who believed in me. We ate, laughed, and shared stories. The table felt alive again. No whispers, no lies, just voices that filled the space with peace. Halfway through dinner, Nora raised her glass. "To truth," she said, "and to those brave enough to face it." Everyone echoed, "To truth." I looked around the table and saw something I hadn't felt in a long time. Belonging. After dessert, I walked to the garage. On a small shelf sat the black box that once held all my evidence. I opened it one last time. Inside were copies of every file, every note, every clip. I smiled and whispered, "You did your job." Then I locked it, sealed it with tape, and wrote one word on top: closure. When I went back inside, laughter still filled the room. I sat down and joined in. For the first time, the sound didn't echo against old pain. It stayed warm and real. The next few months felt calm but strange. I was known now, but in a quiet way. People recognized me at the grocery store. Some would nod, others would stop to say thank you. "You made me buy a camera," one woman said, laughing. My neighbors stopped stealing my mail after that. I smiled. It was small talk, but it meant something. Every thank you reminded me that my story hadn't ended in pain. It had grown roots in other lives. I decided to post one more video on my channel. In it, I said, "They call me paranoid, but paranoia saved me. Awareness is not fear, it's strength." I paused, letting the silence stretch before I added, "If you believe truth protects, hit subscribe for more stories that matter." The video exploded online. Within hours, it had millions of views again. I read comments late into the night, eyes tired but heart full. People were beginning to see watching not as weakness, but as wisdom. I closed my laptop and stared out the window. The house that once held lies now reflected the soft red blink of the camera light. It wasn't a warning anymore. It was a heartbeat. The news spread faster than I expected. Reporters called me the man who made justice viral. I didn't care for titles, but I understood their meaning. My story had touched something raw and real. A week later, I got an invitation to speak at a community hall downtown. The topic: elder protection and the power of proof. I stood before a crowd of gray heads and nervous smiles. Some held their children's hands. I told them my truth in plain words. It doesn't matter if people call you paranoid. What matters is that you don't stop believing your own eyes. The room went silent, then broke into applause. I didn't expect tears, but they came anyway, quiet and honest. Afterward, an older man hugged me. "You made me brave," he said. "My daughter's been taking my pension. I'm going to stop her." His words hit deep. I realized my story was no longer just revenge. It was rescue, the quiet kind that saves people you'll never meet. That night, I sat by my window again, watching lights twinkle down the street. Justice, I thought, wasn't fire or fury. It was steady and patient, like the little red glow of my camera in the dark. Weeks later, something unexpected happened. My daughter posted a video online. I found it late one night while scrolling. The title read, "To my father, the man I wronged." Her eyes were red, her voice trembling. "I was greedy," she said. "I hurt the only person who loved me unconditionally. I wanted control, not understanding. I thought I could fix my life by taking his. I was wrong." I watched it twice, then 3 times. The tears she cried were not the same ones from court. These looked real. For the first time, I saw the girl I once raised, lost, learning, reaching for grace. Comments poured under her video. Forgiveness, comfort, reminders that change was still possible. I didn't comment. I just closed the laptop and sat still. The next day, the mail came, a single letter from her. "Dad, I don't want money or anything back. I just want peace between us someday." I set the letter beside my morning coffee. The house felt different. The silence wasn't lonely anymore. It was open, waiting for something gentle to return. After her apology, news stations called again. They wanted to follow up. The family that healed through proof. I agreed, but only if she joined. She hesitated at first, but finally said yes. The day of the interview, she came to my house alone. She looked older, softer. "It feels strange being here," she said. I nodded. "It's still home, if you want it to be someday." The interview went smoothly. We told the story together. How lies nearly destroyed us, and how truth forced us to face ourselves. She spoke quietly but firmly. I thought control was love. I was wrong. My father showed me what real strength looks like. When it aired, people cried. Messages flooded in again, but this time they weren't about revenge. They were about forgiveness. Viewers said, "Your story healed something in me." That night, she stayed for dinner. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. We sat in the same kitchen where the lies began, eating quietly under warm light. For once, silence didn't hurt. It felt like peace finally finding its seat at the table. The next morning, I recorded one final video. I set the camera on the table, sunlight streaming through the blinds. I looked straight into the lens and said, "They call me paranoid, but cameras don't lie. People do, but sometimes people can change too." I took a slow breath. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's refusing to stay trapped in what broke you. I forgave not to free them, but to free myself. I smiled a little and added, "If you believe that forgiveness can be the strongest revenge, hit subscribe." Then I ended the recording. I watched the playback once, just to make sure it felt honest. It did. No bitterness, no anger, just truth, simple and whole. When I uploaded it, I felt something close, like a book finally closing after a long read. The video spread fast again, but I didn't check the numbers. I just stepped outside, letting the wind move through the open door. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for anyone to listen. The truth had spoken, and the silence that followed was finally enough. The months after that last video felt different. Life slowed down, but the world kept calling my name. News outlets played clips of me saying, "Truth isn't loud, it's patient." It became a quote printed on posters in magazines and even on a billboard downtown. People called my story the Paranoid Redemption. I didn't mind the name. Maybe being called paranoid wasn't an insult anymore. Maybe it meant alert, alive, aware. I got a letter from a senator's office. They were drafting a new law, the Lane Act. It would protect seniors from being declared incompetent without full investigation. My story had helped spark it. I sat there reading the letter, and for the first time, I cried openly, not from loss, but from pride. My daughter called that night. "Dad, they're naming a law after you?" She laughed softly. Mom would have been proud. I smiled at that. She'd say it's about time I did something useful. We talked for an hour about nothing and everything, weather, neighbors, plans. No apologies, no old wounds, just a gentle quiet between words. When I hung up, I looked at the red camera light blinking in the corner. It had once been my guard. Now it was my reminder. I had survived. I had built something good from the ashes. A month later, I was invited to speak at the State House. They wanted me to tell my story as the Lane Act was signed into law. I stood at the podium, the same USB drive hanging from a chain around my neck like a medal. I told them everything. How lies had lived in my home, how truth came through a lens, how awareness saved me. This, I said, holding the drive up, is not just a device. It's proof that one voice, one truth, can stop 1,000 lies. The crowd stood and clapped. Reporters took photos, flashes bright like stars. But the best part was seeing faces of families, sons holding mothers' hands, daughters hugging fathers. Later that night, I sat in my car and whispered, "We did it." I didn't mean me alone. I meant every person who had ever been called crazy for noticing what others ignored. Justice wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to everyone willing to look closely enough to see. After the ceremony, offers poured in books, documentaries, even a movie deal. I turned them all down. My story was not entertainment. It was a lesson written in scars. Instead, I started a foundation with the sponsorship money. I called it the Watchlight Project. It gave free cameras and legal help to seniors who feared financial abuse. The first month, 50 families reached out, then hundreds. My living room became an office. Volunteers came every day. I sat at the same table where my daughter once lied, now surrounded by people helping others stay safe. The irony wasn't lost on me. It was beautiful. One afternoon, I got a letter from a woman in Nevada. "Your camera kit saved me," she wrote. My son was stealing my pension. Now I have proof. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into my notebook beside my daughter's apology. Sometimes, real revenge isn't hurting those who hurt you. It's helping others so the cycle ends. That night, I turned on the porch light and watched the neighborhood glow. For the first time in my life, darkness didn't scare me. It reminded me that light always finds a way back. A year later, the world still remembered my story. My daughter's video had millions of views. She had become a volunteer for the foundation, quietly helping others protect themselves. Sometimes we worked side by side, careful but kind. One evening, she said, "I used to hate those cameras." I smiled. "Now they help people." She nodded. "They help me too." She looked around the house. "You ever think about taking them all down?" "Maybe someday," I said, "but not yet." They're like old friends, always watching, always honest. That night, I posted one last message to my channel. "Cameras never lie," I said, "but forgiveness sees what they can't." It became my most shared video, not because it was shocking, but because it was soft, human. People wrote, "Thank you for reminding us that healing is the truest justice." I turned off the comments, closed my laptop, and sat in the dim glow of the kitchen. For the first time, I realized my story had stopped being about revenge. It had become about freedom, the quiet kind that comes when you stop running from your own past. The foundation grew beyond what I could manage alone. Cities called asking for training. News anchors spoke about lane kits being installed in nursing homes. My small battle had become a movement. I hired a team to run the project so I could rest. When I handed over the keys to the new office, I felt the same pride I'd once felt holding my daughter as a baby. Hope wrapped in something fragile. Reporters kept calling, but I wanted peace now. I spent more time outside, planting flowers, feeding birds, drinking tea on the porch. The cameras stayed, but I rarely checked them. Their small red lights blinked softly, not as guards but as memories. One night, I scrolled through old videos on my drive. The day of the court, my daughter's first apology, the first clip of the stolen mail. I didn't cry. I just watched and whispered, "It's over now." Then I pressed delete. Every file, every image, every shadow. The screen went blank. I smiled. Justice didn't live in the recordings anymore. It lived in me. After deleting the files, I felt like I'd taken my first deep breath in years. The house was silent, but not empty, just quiet in the right ways. I walked through each room slowly, touching walls, opening curtains, letting sunlight pour in. My daughter still came by sometimes. She never asked for money, never talked about the past unless I did. Once, she brought a stray cat that had wandered onto her porch. "He's friendly," she said. The cat rubbed against my leg and purred. I laughed. "Then he's home." We named him Lucky, maybe because we both were. As the months passed, I stopped checking my email, stopped reading the news about myself. People would always tell my story, but I didn't need to live inside it anymore. Instead, I wrote letters, simple thank yous to the people who'd helped me, the bank clerk, the lawyer, even nor the reporter. I wanted them to know that they'd save more than money or property. They'd save my belief in good people. That night, as I turned off the last light, the cameras blinked one by one, like old friends saying goodbye. I whispered, "Rest easy. We made it." Spring came soft and golden. Lucky followed me everywhere, onto the porch, into the garden, even into the garage where I used to hide from the noise. The garden bloomed brighter than ever. Maybe peace had a way of feeding things. One afternoon, while pruning roses, I found another letter in the mail. It was from my daughter again. Her handwriting looked steadier this time. "Dad, I'm engaged. He's kind. He knows everything and still loves me. I'd like you to meet him someday." I smiled. The paper smelled faintly of lilac. I folded it neatly and tucked it beside her first apology. Time had turned pain into something gentler. That night, she called. We talked about her fiancé, her new apartment, the weather, normal things. Before hanging up, she said softly, "I'm proud to be your daughter again." I swallowed hard. "I'm proud to be your father still." After the call, Lucky jumped into my lap. The stars above the garden blinked like the red lights once did, watching, steady, peaceful. Summer returned, and so did the calm rhythm of small days. Morning walks, coffee on the porch, visits from friends. Life felt ordinary again, and that was its own miracle. One evening, I sat by the window and recorded one final message. Not for the world, just for myself. This is what safety looks like. I whispered to the camera. Not fear, not control, just peace earned the hard way. I didn't plan to upload it. It was just a record for me. A reminder that even when the world tries to silence you, truth will always find a way to speak. Later, I watched Lucky chase fireflies in the yard. His fur caught the glow, tiny sparks lighting the dark. I laughed quietly, realizing I hadn't laughed that freely in years. The phone buzzed with messages, but I let them wait. The world could tell its stories. I was finally living mine. That night, I left the porch light on, not as a signal, but as a promise. Darkness would never own this house again. Autumn arrived with gold leaves and cool wind. My daughter visited with her husband. We shared dinner and laughter. The past stayed where it belonged, behind us. After dessert, she handed me an envelope. Inside was a photograph, her wedding day. She stood under sunlight, smiling like she used to when she was little. On the back, she'd written, "Because you taught me that truth doesn't have to hurt to be real." I framed it that night, set beside the old firefighter photo of me and my wife, past and present side by side, both survivors in their own ways. Before bed, I looked around the house, the same walls, the same air, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like home again. Lucky purred at my feet as I whispered, "We did it." Not revenge, not victory, just peace. The red light above the door flickered once, then steadied, watching but no longer guarding, like an old soldier finally at ease. Winter came quiet. I woke one morning to frost on the windows, sunlight spilling across the floor. The house was still warm, alive. I made coffee, opened the blinds, and watched the world outside move on. I'd learned something simple but powerful. Justice isn't loud, it's patient. I picked up my camera one last time, pointed it toward the sunrise. The red light blinked, recording. I said softly, "For anyone watching this, remember, being careful isn't paranoia. It's self-respect." I smiled. "And forgiveness, that's the final proof that you've truly won." I set the camera down. Its light blinked once, twice, then faded. The screen filled with a reflection of my calm face. The same man who once sat trembling in fear, now at peace. Outside, Lucky stretched in the light. The title faded in my mind like closing credits. They call me paranoid, but the truth? I was simply aware. And for the first time in forever, I felt completely free. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like this video. Click on the next video to see how justice is served cold.